So tell us, Disco, about the other part of that equation then, in terms of the lightweight fighter competition that followed, the mafia. What was it called? The lightweight fighter mafia that was trying to push for the F-16 versus the F-15, the high cost of the F-15 paired with the low cost of the, let's say, more ubiquitous F-16. How was that going to work? How did you view that? And later, how did you come to view that as an experienced Eagle guy?
We were never really sure how it was going to work. I was at the Pentagon. I had my first tour. I was at the Pentagon for a year. What was known back then as an ASTRA, Air Staff Training Program, kind of an internship. And the fighter mafia was in the basement of the Pentagon trying to come up with a follow-on to the F-4. So what drove the F-16 was not a competition with the F-15. It was something to replace the F-4. We are now, at this point, we're talking the early 80s. I was at the Pentagon in 79, 80. And the Carter administration basically told the Air Force that, because what we really wanted was more 111s as our bomb dropper. Because by the time the F-15 had gone through the 70s and was deployed worldwide, by 79, we had bases from Okinawa all the way around to Bitburg and Schusterberg on that side of the planet. So the F-15 by 79 was deployed worldwide. Now, there still was probably a third of the fighter force, or a quarter of the fighter force, was F-15s. So there was 2/3 to 3/4 of the force was still these F-4 Phantoms left over from Vietnam, even C's and D models. And they were long in the tooth. They were ragged. Their technology was lagging badly. What we were seeing being developed on the other side of the Iron Curtain with the Flogger and follow-ons. It had a notoriously bad bombing accuracy record. For instance, to harken back to the F-100, it was that the F-100, although it was the super saver like the F-86 in terms of its overall configuration, bubble canopy, it had 420 millimeters instead of the 650 cals, and it had leading edge slats because it was just a sled as far as generating any turn. So it went to Vietnam as the air-to-air escort for F-105s. Well, it didn't do so well there, so then they relegated it to close air support, and it did really well there because it was accurate. With this little, almost primitive gun sight, it was accurate. I can remember one of my instructors who had flown F-100s in Vietnam. He checked in with a FAC because there were trucks on the Ho Chi Minh Trail that needed to be put out of action, and the checked in with it was a Buzzard Flight of 2 F-100s ready to do whatever you want, and the FAC goes, 2 F-100s? I thought I was getting 4 F-4s, and the Buzzard 01 said, well, what do you want? 4 bombs on the target or 24 around it? Because the F-4 couldn't hit its ass with both hands in a well-lighted room when it came to precision bombing, right? So the Carter administration in 1979, 80, 81 told the Air Force that we are not funding a new bomb dropper for the Air Force, and the F-111 had become a fiasco for a lot of reasons. But if you come up with a cheap airplane that'll carry bombs, then we'll buy that. So the lightweight fighter was more of a political decision than it was a military decision.
So where does the Day VFR piece come from then? I thought the idea behind the F-16 was that they wanted a Day VFR fighter is that the same thing? Is a Day VFR fighter something that can go out and battle with what they thought was coming down the pipeline turned out to be the MiG-29 and drop bombs? Are they different missions? Are they different things?
No. Day VFR fighter, the word fighter in Air Force lexicon means air-to-air and air-to-ground. It was going to be the air-to-ground part of the high-low mix. Going to be lots of them. They're cheap. If we lose them, then didn't cost much anyway. But it had no real air-to-air capability on the scale of the F-15. The radar could see about 50%, the initial one, 50% of the range of the EO, because it had this little bitty radar antenna. And the F-15's got this ginormous, nothing escapes the eye of the eagle. The F-16, it was very nimble, provided it had stripped off all its stores, but it could carry 4 AIM-9s, no BVR capability, but it at that stage of development, which is very early, it was strictly seen as a bomb carrier. There were going to be hordes of these things coming in under the protection of the F-15 and dropping bombs, because the two things that it did have from the F-15, one is the fly-by-wire system. As you know, from on top of the stick, or just below the hand grip on the stick, at the top of the stick, is a pressure sensor where the system senses the pressure that the pilot is putting on the hand grip. And that became the right-handed fly-by-wire stick. Very little movement. In fact, at first there was none at all, and it was just a pressure transducer. The other thing was that the computer, the fire control computer, had all of the trajectories of all of the bombs in the B words in the U.S. Air Force inventory. And as you know from our research, there was a move afoot at first to make the F-15 a bomb dropper. But the Air Force was so hard over about no. This is going to be a dedicated air superiority fighter, because the Air Force knew that as soon as you start putting bombs on the F-15, it will be the replacement for the F-4. And because it's so expensive, we're not going to get very many of them. But if we buy these F-16s that cost about 2/3 of an F-15, maybe even only half, we basically get buy one, get one free for the same amount of money. So the greatest thing about the F-16 was its growth potential. It was able to outgrow especially with increases in computing power, the radar, the engines. Remember when the A-10 was also being developed at about this time period? Somebody thought it'd be really nice to sling a 30-millimeter gun pod on the belly of an F-16 so that it could shoot tanks too, right? Because we were expecting the Fulda Gap scenario. The Russians were going to come across the Iron Curtain through Fulda Gap and try to conquer West Germany. So we needed more tank killers, right? So they backed up the F-16, put a 30-millimeter gun pod on it, lowered it back to the ground, and the wheels didn't even touch the ground because it was resting on the belly of the gun pod. Yeah, but so their solution: we'll put bigger tires on it, right? So early on, it was just a simple little sports car of an airplane, but it has such great growth potential. It became a fantastic fighter, fantastic. So, but it didn't start off like that. Yeah, I can tell you stories, but I won't.
No. Tell the story. Tell the story.
Well, somebody when I was in the Pentagon, the guys that were against the fighter mafia saying, no, we need a real airplane to replace the F-4, and it's not going to be the F-15. The analogy, because the fuel tankage in the F-16, the initial prototypes, was so small that you plug it into afterburner and you're not going to get out of the county. Okay. So, unless you throttle back, and the analogy was that the initial F-16, it had the payload of an F-100 going the speed of an A-7 and the range of a F-104. In other words, all of the shortcomings of all those other airplanes combined was the F-16. It could carry two 500-pounders at 420 knots to the end of the county. Yeah. So anyway, it was not favored by the Air Force at all, and the Carter administration basically gave us an ultimatum: you buy this, or you're going to have to wait to a different administration. And how much longer your F-4 is going to last you.